The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lean Into the Community webinar series, session 6. In this session, we're going to be talking about people that are looking to either retire or exit business ownership at this time, and we have someone that can talk through a lot of the things that you need to consider if you are interested in doing that. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Wendy Austin, your host. I own a business which is WSI Healthy Digital Solutions. And in February, I joined the Chamber of Commerce, the Midstate Chamber of Commerce, and didn't have a lot of chance to network with everyone. So this is my way of introducing myself and giving back to the community during this time. So let me just introduce our expert panelists today. Michael Fromson owns Compass Business Solutions, which assists business owners in exiting their business in an orderly and efficient way. He has particular expertise in family business and succession planning. Prior to this, he was a principal in a business that grew to over $35 million. He sold his ownership to both a financial buyer and a separate private equity group. He has his MBA in finance and operations from Harvard and is certified by Pinnacle Equity Solutions as an exit planner. Michael?
Good afternoon. I hope you all are managing through this difficult time. It's challenging for all of us. So today, we're going to discuss how a business owner can assess, capture, and transfer the value trapped in their business. So initially, why are we talking about value? And there's really two reasons why we're talking about value. First, for most business owners, the value of their business represents a significant part of their net worth. And secondly, the value they will receive, net of taxes and fees, will determine the investable assets they have to fund their lifestyles and any other legacy or estate goals they might have. So today's discussion is really here for you, and I want you to feel free to ask questions. I hope you will appreciate the importance of planning your exit so you can receive the best payout for all your hard work. I will also discuss how I work with owners to change the business in order to increase the value and appeal to buyers.
Thank you, Michael. Have you ever experienced situations in which a business owner came to you because they wanted to sell but was not ready?
Yes, I have. First of all, I want to just preface this by saying that the real goal of exit planning is to make your illiquid asset, your business, to turn that into some sort of investable asset. So I want to talk about something called a value gap. In situations, there are certain situations where an owner really cannot afford to leave their business. So let me explain. Let's assume a business owner is receiving in income, benefits, and perks, say, $200,000 per year. So if they're going to sell their business, the question is, will they receive, net after taxes, enough cash to replace the paycheck and perks they are giving up? And let's assume, for example, that they can earn 5% on their investments forever. So if they have no other income and savings except what they get from their business, then they would need $4 million in investable assets to replace their paycheck. So the question that needs to be answered is whether the sale of the company will put $4 million in the pocket of the owner. If the answer is no, the owner can either keep working or reduce the cost of their retirement lifestyle. If they have enough time and want to keep working, I generally recommend that they put together a strategy to change this situation. They can change this situation in a couple of ways. They can first of all create more retirement nest eggs, 401ks or qualified plans. They can generate rental income if they have real estate, and that will help mitigate the effects of this value gap. But the value gap is real, and a lot of business owners don't fully appreciate this until they start thinking about leaving their business. That's why I recommend that you look at the value of your business at least a few years before you want to get out, so that you can avoid this situation and have a successful event.
All right, many people today that called in may not know what exit planning is. Can you describe it?
Sure. Basically, exit planning is about developing a strategy for transferring control and ownership of a business. I'm really like a quarterback. My only commitment is to manage the process and get a business owner to their goal with the help of certain specialized advisor. I'm not really invested in any particular outcome, nor am I compensated for any particular transaction. I work with the owner to come up with a strategy for an exit by considering an owner's goals, their personal finances, and the financial and operational condition of the business. We explore options, and once we agree on the optimal approach, we bring it to completion with the input of expert advisors, including attorneys and possibly M&A advisors.
And why would they use an exit planner?
Sure. Well, the reason why exit planning exists is that running a business and exiting a business are very different. Exiting a business requires special knowledge and integrating information across several specialties. It's hard for an owner to be an expert in something they may do only once in their life. Exit planners who wisely help you through an exit really do put money in your pocket. Many of the business owners that I've engaged who occasionally want to try to sell their business themselves are still trying to sell their business. So it's a very different process.
Okay. Can you give us a little more detail about what your process looks like?
Sure. Well, initially, I provide what I call an NDA or non-disclosure agreement that ensures that all the information that the owner discloses to me is kept absolutely confidential. And this is essential because I never know what details are going to be critical. And so I have to be able to ask a lot of questions, which is what I do. I really ask a lot of questions because the owner is really in control, and I'm just trying to facilitate the process. I then sit down after the NDA is signed with the owners and discuss what are their financial and personal goals are. Basically, how much cash do they want, and what personal or legacy goals do they have? For example, do they just want to get the highest price for their business, or do they want to sell to an employee or management team and possibly take a lower price? Once the owner has a sense of what direction they want to go in, I then determine what an estimate of business value is.
Can I stop you for a moment?
Sure.
Can you describe a little bit about business value?
Yeah. This is important. There are many different approaches to valuing privately held businesses. For the purposes of this discussion and for time, I'll describe two. For smaller businesses with, say, between $500,000 and $2 million in revenue, there's a concept called seller's discretionary earnings. The assumption of this approach is that the owner has discretion as to how they spend money on themselves, so that everything that can be tied to them is really part of income that the new owner will receive.
Okay, and
we start with the business pre-tax profits, and then we add a single owner's total compensation, including perks such as benefits and auto. We add depreciation and amortization. We add one-time expenses we add interest, and we add non-operating expenses. And that's basically called seller's discretionary cash flow. And the multiple of that typically is between 2 and 3 times seller's discretionary cash flow, but it can be different.
Okay. And what is the other valuation approach?
Sure, the other approach is to use what we refer to as a normalized EBITDA, EBITDA. And EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. We say we normalize the earnings by correcting for items that are lower or higher than an arm's length or market-based arrangement would be, because the owner wants it that way. Let me explain. Let's say an owner pays himself $500,000 for a job that would normally pay $150,000. We would add back the difference of $350,000 to the profits. So I go through and normalize the EBITDA by looking at all the significant items in the income statement and tax returns. Typically, the companies that are valued using this approach are larger and may sell for higher multiples of their normalized earnings.
So after you give the owners a valuation, what percentage typically move forward and try to sell their business?
I would say slightly more than half my clients move ahead.
Okay, and for those that move forward because they like the evaluation that you did, are there other aspects of the sale that they should be aware of?
Yes, there are many issues besides valuation that are really key. I'd like to highlight 2 issues that are central to any business transfer. The first issue is what is being transferred. Specifically, are you going to sell assets, or are you going to sell stock or ownership rights? Most buyers want to purchase assets and not stock, and the reason for that is that with the stock or ownership right comes the liabilities, which the new owners do not want to assume. The other issue to think about is the timing of payments by the buyer to the seller. It is rare to be paid 100% cash at the closing. If the buyer perceives risk, they will want to pay the seller over time, and they will want some of the payments to be based on how the company does after the closing. We call this an earn-out. This is often a very contentious issue. If the business is seen as less risky, then more of the price is paid for at the closing.
So for those that don't move forward, what can they do to change their business to make it more attractive to a potential buyer?
Well, this is much of what I work on. It takes a little time, but the payoff can be large. I'd like to share a story about one of my former clients. I had a client whose business was worth about $500,000 when I started. We put in several operating systems, inventory control systems with good financial controls, and we created a management team that enabled my client to develop new sources of revenue. And then with a focused set of meetings, we created more accountability, and the performance was rewarded within the company. We also had formal engagements with some of the key employees. We relocated one of the service centers to a facility with a better layout and with expansion capability. And 2.5 years later, my client went to market at a valuation of over $2 million. So there are many, many things you can do. And this is, so for other clients, I have helped them position their business for a sale. Besides growing profits and revenue, there are specific things that buyers are looking for. And this is one thing I think it's really important for sellers to think about. and foremost is growth potential and untapped capacity. If someone buys your business, they really want to know, once they take ownership of it, how much bigger can it get? First and foremost is the second item that buyers are looking for is a management team. Because when an owner has personnel that can run the business, there are many buyers who will see the future of the company as less risky. Also, what it means is the buyer doesn't have to have any special expertise. They can allow on the business-specific expertise to be handled by the staff who will stay with the business. Other areas that can make a business much, much more attractive to a buyer are recurring revenue, contracts with customers, less dependency on the owner's skill sets, and as I mentioned before, key employee agreements with non-competes. Also, if an owner has operating systems to make his revenue and profitability more reliable and repeatable, buyers will view this business as less risky. One important item that I want to carve out, which I've helped clients deal with, which is really key, is revenue concentration. Say a business is profitable, but has 40% of their business with one customer. Buyers perceive that as a problem. They see it as risky because they are thinking that if you lose that one customer, your business has a completely different value. So they will either pay you less or they will pay you over time to minimize this risk. I often review my clients' sources of revenue and help them minimize revenue concentration. So as you can see, there are many areas an owner can work on to make their business more attractive to a buyer. And every engagement I have is different. It is not one size fits all. I found that my broad skill set is pretty key to be able to perceive where the tweaking for each business is required. All of my engagements are different.
Okay. It seems today that many baby boomers are trying to get out of their businesses. Is this an issue that owners need to be aware of?
Well, sure. So let me explain something. That most buyers of businesses today are looking at more than one business at a time. So they might decide they want to buy a vehicle repair business. So they might look at 6 vehicle repair businesses. And so they're assessing which ones are more or less risky. And the ones that have no management team, have no systems, have high dependence on the owner, or have say one big client, they're perceived as much riskier than ones that don't have those features. And if you want your business to stand out, to be attractive, because many more business owners are trying to sell their business than there are buyers. So you really need to position your business so that it's going to make a good impression. For instance, businesses are being sold all the time, but the people who've done their homework are selling their businesses more quickly and for higher prices. It's really similar to like selling a home in the sense that the homes that sell well are the homes that don't have any deferred maintenance and are staged and are in good shape. It's the same thing with selling a business. The buyers are very, very skittish about buying a business because remember, they're not buying your past, they really are buying your future.
So far I've been assuming that businesses have just one owner, but there are more than one owner in a lot of situations. Are there challenges that you've encountered with this?
Yeah, sure. When a business has several owners, there are a lot of challenges. Normally, when I'm engaged by several owners, I make sure that the owners are on the same page, that they agree on roughly what the value they would take is. They agree on whether they're going to stay with the business or leave. And I usually ask them if they have any written agreements that will facilitate a transfer. And generally what I'm looking for is two agreements. One agreement is called a buy-sell agreement. That's an agreement in case one of the owners in this process gets sick or dies. And a buy-sell agreement is a legally binding agreement between co-owners that specifies what happens if a co-owner dies or is forced to leave a business or chooses to leave a business. And generally the buy-sell agreements are funded or guaranteed through life insurance. One of the problems I often see in businesses is that the life insurance is inadequate to fund the obligation. Let me explain specifically on this one item. When people start a business, sometimes co-owners will each have $500,000 of life insurance on each other's life to, fund a disaster in case one of them gets sick or dies. A lot of times they don't look at that insurance policy again, and 10 years, 15 years later, they might have a business that's worth not $1 million, but $5 million, but they still only have $500,000 of life insurance. And that's a real problem, because then the life insurance, which is there to buy out your partner, is inadequate. And in those situations, sometimes what happens is the business has to be put up for sale rather than having the surviving owner buy the interest out from the other owner's estate. The other agreement I look at is an operating agreement, or the bylaws that will help guide an exit strategy if the owners are unsure of the ground rules. And that can be very helpful. And I usually go through that with the owners to make sure they're clear about what they've signed and what they've agreed to.
Okay. How will our dealing with COVID-19 affect an owner's ability to get paid for the value that's in their business?
Well, that's the $64,000 question. So a lot of people are thrashing through that right now in terms of the details, but I can tell you what the basic basis of their work is, and that is when earnings in a company are normalized, non-recurring effects of an event are added back. So if a business is really going through a rough time right now, but is able to gain their momentum and their equilibrium and return to the profitability they had before, then this time period of COVID-19 will not have a significant effect on the value. If, however, after COVID-19 goes away, the revenue and profitability never returns to the business, then the long-term value of that business will be permanently altered. So it really depends. There's some businesses that will skate through this with minimal impact, and there are others that really could suffer a more extensive change in their valuation. What is more troubling to me is that if the effect on the economy is longer term, then it could take a few years before valuations of privately businesses recover significantly. And of course, I hope for all the business owners listening, I hope I am wrong. But that's the thing. And so valuation during this time period, after you recover from COVID-19, your business recovers, will be a challenge, and it will be something that people will have to come up with some sort of consensus on precisely how much they should normalize the earnings to address this pandemic.
All right, if there was one or two overarching recommendations that you could give business owners who are thinking of selling their business, what would those be?
Well, I'm unlikely to be very terribly prescriptive of anything right now, but historically, I think there are a couple things that I would recommend all business owners to do. And that is, first of all, you're going to be a much better seller if you try to think like a buyer. And buyers think about risk and how the past may not be the same as the future. So they're looking at everything in your business that they think will change, including the dependence of the owner on the owner, your revenue stream, what happens if you lose a client, what happens if you lose a key employee. That's what buyers are thinking of. So if you can think that way as a seller, you'll be in better shape. And the second thing I would recommend all business owners do is seek advice from individuals who are familiar with selling a business. Now, there are many different people who can help you. But for instance, let's talk about, for instance, attorneys. Like, if you have an attorney who has a good background in business, they may be fine. But if you have an attorney who just deals with real estate, maybe they're smart enough to learn this stuff. But in general, I would recommend dealing with someone who deals with this stuff all the time. You know, if you had something wrong with your knee, you wouldn't ask your dentist. And correspondingly, in as far as lawyers, I think law today is quite specialized. So I'd recommend, in general, that you get advice from people who have who really have experience in the area of transactions with selling a business.
All right, thank you, Michael. I did have one other question. So if someone was thinking of selling their business and doesn't need to sell their business, is not going through a financial hardship, they are interested to know your recommendation on whether they should wait a year to see what happens or to go ahead and start that process now.
Well, I think I would say basically, I assume it's a local business. It depends on how the business is doing. There's two answers to that question. One part is, how well is the business doing? If the business is doing really well now and has been relatively unaffected during this pandemic, that's a really great endorsement for someone to buy your business. On the other hand, right now, the level of uncertainty is such that very few people, there are very few buyers out there, because buyers get really skittish when they see uncertainty, and if they don't know how long things are going to be soft in the economy, or how long, or whether there's another possibly episode of this in the fall or next year, and they don't know what the demand for your product is, they may hold off. So I would say that's a longer conversation, but that's the way I think of it. I look at how the business is doing specifically, and then the general environment. I would say that if you can wait and your business is just doing okay, I would say probably to postpone it, only because I think that right now there are very few buyers out there, and many of the buyers who are out there are looking for a special price. And if you don't have to make that accommodation, I would say you should wait and build the value and get your planning done so you're ready when the economy starts to improve.
All right, thank you, Michael. If there's any other questions, you can put your questions into the question box, or you can raise your hand and I'll unmute your mic. Okay, it looks like we have no further questions. So thank you, Michael, again. And I'm going to go to Rosanne to do the ending comments.
Thank you, Michael. That was very, very great information on topics that I'm sure many folks might be looking to at one time or another, whether it's now during this crisis or certainly great information for future. I just want to again thank everyone that is taking advantage of these webinars, and a special thank you to Wendy Austin, WSI Healthy Digital Solutions, for putting them together, coordinating them. And please, just a reminder, visit our COVID virus resource page, which is at www.chamber.com. We've also added a subpage with that, which is entitled Webinars. So you will find recordings for most of our recent webinars out there. So please take a look at those as your schedule allows. There's a lot of great information that we are all helping to provide, and you certainly will be more informed after viewing some of them. Finally, two things we're excited about this week. We do have a virtual hour scheduled for tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. So check find for the information on that. We also have it posted on our Facebook page and on our website. And we are starting something called It's a Beautiful Day in the Chamberhood. We will be visiting some of our efforts and doing Facebook Live snippets. Our first will be this Thursday at Rose Flowers and Gifts at 2 p.m. And we'll also be visiting Gallery 53 in downtown Meriden on Monday at 11. So stay tuned for those, a unique and creative way to promote some of our members, especially with Mother's Day coming up. So again, thank you to all. Please check out midstatechamber.com, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.
All right, great, thank you. And so the next session is on Friday, and we will be talking about promoting your business and coming back strong. And then the final webinar will be next Tuesday. We're going to have the Workforce Alliance on that one to talk about how to hire back employees that you might have let go. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.